Aloha and welcome to Inside Hawaii Real Estate. I'm Will Tanaka with my co-host, business partner, and wife, Leonie Lam.
Thanks, Will. Together as full-time realtors, we're bringing you the latest in Hawaii real estate. Today, we are going to be diving in, really deep dive into one of the most pressing issues facing Hawaii property owners. We're talking about rising insurance premiums, underinsured properties, the recent events, including the devastating Maui wildfires and California wildfires, they further intensified the insurance crisis, making it more important than ever to understand your own insurance coverage. So whether you own a condominium or a single family home, this discussion is crucial to understanding and protecting your investment. And we have the condo expert in Hawaii with us today.
That's right. Special guest, Sue Savio, president and owner of Insurance Associates, and celebrating her 50-year in business in the Hawaii insurance industry. She's widely recognized as a leading authority and expert on property insurance, especially condos. And we're going to talk about everything to do with insurance. So thank you very much for taking time to be on our show, Sue.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
All right, so let's dig deep into it. So the first question is, just for our viewers, can you briefly explain what's driving the dramatic rise in insurance premiums in Hawaii and nationwide?
Okay, well, in Hawaii, we have to go back to 2023, and that basically was the Lahaina fire. And that was devastating for the insurance industry. And what it brought to attention was that the reinsurers who insure all of America, they have not been charging Hawaii any type of catastrophic rates. And so what happened, even though our rates were getting a few percentage points each year from the reinsurers, when Lahaina hit, we actually got charged with a huge increase in our rates, and they spiked 300 to 500% if you were a wood frame or a non-concrete condo. If you were a concrete condo, it spiked anywhere from 100 to 250%. So
wow.
It is huge, and it was devastating, and nobody expected it, because the last time that happened was when Iniki hit 30 some odd years ago. And that also caused our rates to increase for 2 years. Insurance companies back then actually left Hawaii, whereas this time they didn't leave Hawaii, but they cut back on what they were willing to write. So a condo that maybe had $100 million worth of coverage was able to get it from like one company before Lahaina. After Lahaina, the maximum they would write would be 10 million any one building. So you had to go out and layer your coverages with many companies to get the 100 million that you needed. And of course, that added to the price. And of course, nobody expected it, because we all budget, being a condo board president myself a couple times, we all budget around August and September for the following year. And we were budgeting, anticipating maybe a 50% increase because of Lahaina. And it turned out to be very wrong. And it was closer to 300 to 500% for the average. And of course, there's people over average that pay more. And a couple of people were lucky and they only paid maybe 100% or 150%. But we all got zapped.
Wow. So it was, unfortunately, the devastating wildfires. It hit commercial businesses, single family homes, and condos or hotels as well, right?
That affects what the reinsurers pay out and what they charge us, because they're looking to get their dollars back, because it's not like we only have catastrophes every 10 years or 30 years. Hawaii may only be that far apart, but most people have catastrophes in America. Every year we have catastrophes. Before Lahaina, I think it's kind of interesting, they paid $145 billion out in America for catastrophes only. And then in 2023 with Lahaina, they paid out $93 billion. And then what's helping us this year in 2025 is 2024, they only paid out about 60 to 80 billion. And I say only because that's lower than a lot of other years prior. And that's kind of helping the rates coming down in 2025.
So that's good news then in terms of 2025 for now, that the rates, you're seeing them to trend a little bit downwards, than they were in the past couple of years at least. So what does that mean? What are you kind of seeing in terms of that? Our condo buildings, are more of them 100% insured? Because in our market, we have faced so many situations where buyers were unable to purchase with a conventional loan because, there wasn't 100% building coverage for hurricane. Are you seeing like less of that right now, or what are you seeing?
Okay, so most of the buildings that were not carrying 100% were your high-rise condos on Oahu. And what happened was there was a carrier whose parent company opened up their book of business, and they saw that in Hawaii, the small little islands, because they're a national company, that they had 80% of their hurricane exposure in one state. And that is just not acceptable to insurance companies. They try to spread the risk. So they said that they were going to cut back to 25 million one year, and the following year they went to 10 million. Instead of writing 100 million that you needed on that high-rise concrete, they only give you 10 million come 2024. So the cost, and then with Lahaina hitting, the cost of the reinsurance, the cost of excess hurricane insurance was astronomical. So about 375 condos starting in 2023 probably did not have 100%. Because it's starting to come down now, it's closer maybe to 175 to 200 who don't have 100%, with more and more of them looking at it, because our renewals for 2025, more and more of the condos are saying, okay, go for the 100%, Sue. So it is getting better. Is it going to get down to zero this year? No, there will still be condos that don't have 100%.
And that's good news for both buyers, but also for sellers, right? Because sellers were unable to sell their units during this period, and it wasn't good for them, especially if they had a need to do so.
Right. In other words, whether you want to refinance to put the kid through college, or whether you wanted to, sell your unit or buy a unit, if you weren't paying cash, it's pretty much all the local lenders would not loan on any building that didn't have 100%. Now, some boards, when they saw that it was impacting their owners, said, okay, we have no choice. Maybe midterm, they went out and they bought the hurricane for the rest of the policy year. Some of them borrowed it from reserves, but then turned around, which they have to do, and assess the owners, because they have to pay it back within 18 months. So even if they had the money in reserves, they still had to put it back, but they didn't want their owners to suffer. So many of them did buy short-term hurricane insurance for the rest of that policy term. Of course, on renewal, everybody's hopefully has budgeted in 2024 for 2025, knowing how much the cost was and budgeted correctly. But there were still some boards that said, no, we're not doing it. And we try to talk to them explaining why, as does their condo attorney. But, they do worry for their owners about the cost and how are they going to pay for it. And I say you have to put your blinders on and just do your job. And it's a difficult decision.
You make a really good point, because you just mentioned, let's say that there's some condos that are well funded. There's a lot of reserves compared to some other condos. So even if they say, hey, you know what, we have the reserves to pay for the underinsured hurricane insurance, for example, right, for the building, you have to replenish that. So either way, whether it's by, increasing HOA, special assessments, you need to replace the reserves. So just because it's well funded or a condo has a lot of reserves, it's good, right? For peace of mind to a certain extent. But,
yes.
Yeah, but in a certain way, hey, you're going to have to pay to fund that.
Right, because reserves are not for operating expenses. And insurance is an operating expense. Reserves are for the huge things, the spalling, the painting, the elevator refurbishing, windows someday when you got to replace all the windows. It's for the big things. It's for the things, capital improvements in the future. And yes, there's a couple of condos that are 100% funded. Most of us are between 50 to 60. You only have to be 50. Some are under 50, but you're supposed to be at least 50% funded. So that means you should at least have enough to do the projects as they come due when they come due. But if you don't do the projects, or you then say, okay, we got to take the money out for operating, you have to put that back. And the only way to put it back is to ask the owners to pay more. So whether you raise the maintenance fees, whether you assess, that's about the only two ways to get funds, unless somebody wants to leave you some money and leave it to the condo association, which I don't think happens. Oh yeah, it's a tough decision to make, to sit there and say, hey, we're going to charge everybody $500 extra a month for this year. That's a chunk of change that nobody knew they were going to have to give up. And Hawaii's costs aren't cheap. And an extra $500, I had this one board president tell me he had to give up his gym membership, and he gave up something else. And I said, my goal next year, sir, will be to reduce the hurricane so you can go back to the gym. But you feel for these people. Better than having to pick up food, or what are the kids going to eat because I can't afford this. So it is tough.
That is tough, yeah. And then, kind of switching to single family homes. Recently, we're in escrow,
Yeah,
and we represent the buyers. So
right.
the listing agent, after the J1 inspection, everything, we're moving forward. They're like, hey, just want to make sure that your lender, the buyer's lender, is not going to ask for the buyer's professional inspection report. I'm like, no, I don't think so, but I'm going to just double check because you bring that up. And I think she had a complete separate transaction where the lender did ask for the inspection report. So how often is that happening? Of course, due to probably insurance issues. And that's really good to know for prospective buyers and sellers.
It's happening more and more often because the maintenance of your unit, whether it's a condo or a single family home, is huge with the insurance companies. And the mortgage companies are worried now that the insurance company will not provide coverage for the new owner. And I had that happen. This woman had passed away. We were selling the unit. They were going to sell the unit and they needed to buy coverage because she forgot to pay her premium when she passed away or before she passed away, whatever the case may be, but she had no coverage. We went back to the current carrier. The current carrier said no. So everybody else that we went to said, we want an inspection report. This home is 40 some odd years old. What's been done? So we had to get an electrical, a plumbing, and a roof inspection. Now, even though the roof was a very nice tile roof, she could tell us the year it was put on, the trust officer could tell us that, but it was still 30 years old. So they wanted an inspection because anything roof over 20 years of age, the insurance companies want to know what it looks like because we've had huge roof claims, not because we have hurricanes, but because we have strong winds. And all it takes is a few shingles to fall on your ground. I call them roof chasers. They're the roofers who come by in a certain area and look for those shingles where the high winds are. And all of a sudden in one area, they're doing 20, 30 homes, getting new roofs based upon insurance. So they're filing claims. No, it's a long process that it's been wear and tear in a long time. And it's been 30 years of rain and wind and sun and hitting the roof. They're now coming back to the insurance company saying, well, our roof needs to be fixed or repaired. So the adjuster goes out along with the roofer, sees what's wrong, says, okay, this is the amount that we'll cover. We can't repair it because it's beyond repairing. So we have to replace. But so now you've got the problem of, we're not committing fraud, so to speak, but the roofers aren't being the roofers are letting the owners know, we can get you a new roof. That's style. And it's really created a problem. So now before you can take a home on, what does that roof look like? How old is it? Is it maintained? And if not, on this other home that I had trouble with, they literally said that the roofer did the report on what was wrong with it. And they said, everything has to be repaired before we'll even touch it. So that home stood uninsured for 3 months because nobody would write it.
What I'm hearing is it's definitely age of the roof, which we kind of knew, but so home sellers as well as home buyers, but they really need to consider the electrical and the plumbing situation too, because that could be a requisition in addition to what is the age of the roof. And then now there's potential inspections that have to be provided in order to get insurance coverage, it sounds like.
Well, sure, think about it. Take any home, take Ina Heina. The home's built there in the 50s, right? There's some of them that are exactly the way the same. Nothing's been done to them. Haven't been remodeled. It's, and when they go to sell them, because my daughter bought one, so I know, when they go to sell one, all of a sudden, a home built in 52, single wall, who knows what the electrical is like, who knows what the plumbing's like, and we know it's not good. So my daughter had to rip out plumbing, she had to put in new electrical, and she was going to remodel anyway. But that's sort of the area you're getting. While you're doing all this remodeling, you're trying to find a insurance company that will cover it. Because it takes time to do all of this. In the meantime, you don't want your asset to be burnt down. So, you're begging the insurance company, yes, she's my daughter, please consider writing this, but then I have to explain everything she's going to do. I have to show that she's got a signed contract to repair and replace and fix up. That's how it goes. Insurance companies are just saying, no, why should we take on something that is about to fall down or is in such poor taste or such poor condition that if the smallest wind blew, we're going to have issues. That's not what they're getting in the game for. So they're asking for these inspections.
It's good to know because we've heard of storm chasers, ambulance chasers, roof chasers.
Roof chasers.
Had no idea.
Oh yeah, there's roof chasers. complex to another. They were in Kaneo and Kailua not too long ago. Now they're out in Mililani. Oh yeah, they're really good.
Wow. Okay. So this is probably happening nationwide then.
Oh, I would think so. I can't just be Hawaii.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
clever people, but I think it's probably nationwide.
We were thinking about from the buyer's perspective, but now that, from a seller's standpoint, it's like there's a lot to think about in terms of the age of the home. And yeah, I mean, newer roofs, but electrical and plumbing, there's a possibility that if you get into escrow, I mean, these issues could come up.
Right. So you're going to, in other words, if you're going to sell your home, it should be in the best condition it can be in. And if you want to sell it for top dollar, then you better go out and have somebody come and give an inspection and say what needs to be taken care of and take care of it. So you can say, these are the things I've done. I just spent $20,000 upgrading this home, so it would be easier for you to buy into unit owner, so you can at least get insurance. Maybe maybe you're going to put a second story on, fine. When you do, you can do even more repairs. But we need to be very careful what we buy and sell, and we need to make sure that if we're going to escrow, we've got somebody who will insure it.
Well, because the alternative to that is if you don't take the measures needed to satisfy all of these things, roof, electrical, plumbing, then basically you're limiting your buyer pool for the seller, right? They're going to be limited to like an all cash buyer, or even in that case, then the cash buyer might not be able to acquire adequate insurance.
Right.
So it's a serious issue. And I think it's definitely coming more to the forefront now than before.
When you don't have it upgraded so that they can go ahead and insure it, they're going to say, well, okay, it's going to cost me $30,000 to put the roof on. So I'm going to subtract that from your price. And I've got to redo the electrical at this. So that's going to, whereas you could, at least if you had somebody go out and inspect it and they said, hey, we can fix this up and we can get the roof passed by adding these things on, or fixing it up, repairing it. Maybe it doesn't have to be replaced, but as a buyer, the buyer's going to say, well, okay, I have put a new roof on. I'm not going to just fix it if it's in bad shape, right? But so it's important for the seller to get it inspected and figure out what they can do to make it pass.
And so this just came to mind. So if you just knows what from an insurer standpoint, what do they think about just recoating the roof?
If you're recoating it because the coating needs repair, that's fine. But if you're recoating because there's missing shingles and there's missing that, that's not going to work. But if the roofer goes, the roofer's not going to ruin his reputation by lying on a report. So if the roofer So if the roofer goes up, a quality roofer goes up and says, hey, you need to recoat, then that's fine. You recoat. But if the roofer says, no, you need to replace, you need to replace, because you're not going to be able to punch the report, and no roofer's going to do that.
That totally makes sense. And then, in terms of getting help from the government, is there any bills out there in Hawaii that's trying to stabilize the property insurance market, as wildfires and hurricanes and strong winds fuels these higher premiums? I'm glad that it's going in a downward trend, but is there anything that's going on that the legislators are doing?
Well, the legislatures are trying, and I give them credit. And even Governor Green, when Lahaina first hit and the rates were skyrocketing, he did his first proclamation, I think, in August of that year, or maybe September. And he thought the problem was we couldn't get the hurricane insurance, where the problem wasn't availability, it was affordability. So he scratched that, and he went on to do two or three others. And he did come out with the C-PACER bill, which is a bill that they're now extending to go for condos. So if I have to do elevator, spalling, sprinklers, or pipes, I can literally borrow the money from the state, put it on a 30-year set plan, and it's tied to my unit. So, as my unit buys and sells, whatever, the cost goes there. So there's that, as opposed to trying to go to the bank and getting a loan, though we'll see which works better, because condo boards are going to do both. But at least there's an option there for boards who need to do these things, because there are several condos that need to do pipes and sprinklers and roofs and et cetera. So at least there's a way to get the funding to do it, because people just don't have the ability to go out and be charged a $30,000, $40,000 assessment. So that's sort of what he did there. And that was a good thing they did. Now they are trying, but you have to remember that you can't tell an insurance company, you can't raise your rates after Lahaina. They'll say, okay, fine, we won't write condos, or we won't write homes, or we won't write property in your state. Because why, if I can't make a profit, then I don't have to make a big profit, but I have to make a profit. Insurance companies are regulated. And if you say, well, no, you can't, and you've already lost all this money, no company is going to stay and write our business. So rather than trying to regulate the insurance companies, I think we should look at the problem. And to me, the problem is that our climate is getting worse. Hawaii's not anywhere near as bad as anybody else, but we could possibly have another wildfire, maybe, maybe not. We could possibly have a hurricane, more that than probably the wildfire. So why don't we build our homes stronger? Why don't we, instead of giving money to help us pay for our insurance, why not give us money to say, hey, your house needs to be clipped from roof to wall, wall to flooring. You need to put hurricane impacted windows and sliding doors in all your condos. Why not beef up our building codes that we can't just put wind rated windows that go up to 175 or 200, say they have to be hurricane impacted. So then we know if the hurricane comes, the chances of it being destroyed will be much less. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. And somebody was suggesting that the military, with all their housing, they should be forced to fix theirs up, because that's a couple 100,000 people that won't be looking for shelter if the hurricane's coming. Because let's be honest, most of us are not going to stay in our home when the hurricane, if they say the hurricane's coming to Oahu, because we know our windows are not hurricane impacted. We know we have a slew of single wall homes in Hawaii that will just blow over when the hurricane comes. So all of these people are going to have to find shelter, and we don't have it. So I think we need to sort of say, let's take care of building better. Now, granted, the problem with that is the cost of construction goes up. And we've already got a high cost of construction, and homes are already out of price range. But if we either can go back and give credits for owners who do things to make their home safer and better for hurricane exposure, I think that's what we need to do. Don't ask me how to do it. I just think that's what we need to do.
I think that's the right approach, right? I mean, you're looking at the issue and then solving for that versus like all this other stuff, right? There's a root issue that we have. Our homes and our condos here in Hawaii are older, and you're right about the single wall. And, we just kind of hope and pray that things continue to go well, but it is only a matter of time before there's something that happens and is super impactful. So addressing those things.
We can't control the climate. So we got to control the fact that it's going to hit us someday. And how can we make it less offensive when it does hit? And I'm not sure, that's a big problem.
I love that solution. And, we've talked about hurricane and fire insurance. And I think last year the FEMA is redoing the flood map.
Correct.
So, like, for example, you mentioned Aina Haina, New Valley, where it flooded, several years ago. And certain areas used to be D, flood zone D, like undetermined. And I remember one property our buyers decided not to offer because now that there's like a small portion of the street right next to the canal. It was redesignated as AE, starting, I think, next year, January 2026. So from an insurance standpoint, are the insurers looking at the current FEMA map, or are they also looking at the future 2026?
They're also looking at the future, because in other words, even though the standard carrier doesn't cover flood insurance, you're going to buy the property insurance, the hurricane, et cetera, from the property carrier. And then FEMA is going to sell you the flood. So even though my home is not in a flood zone this year, it is going to be in a flood zone next year. So the mortgage companies are the ones that are more worried about that than the insurance companies, because they don't sell the flood insurance. FEMA does. So if the flood comes and trashes your home, your property carrier says, not us, unless it came with a hurricane, and then we cover everything from the wind line up, whereas the water line would be the flood policy. So not so much the hurricane or the property people who are concerned about flood, it's the mortgage companies, because, oh my, you're in a flood, not in a flood zone now, but you're going to be in one next year. The flood insurance is going to cost you this much. Can you afford to pay not only my mortgage, but now you got to pay flood insurance? So in other words, the mortgage companies are concerned on who's buying and do they have the power to pick up the flood insurance.
From a insurance or even the lender's standpoint, when it's, of course, flood zone X is the best.
Right.
And I think there's an XS, off the top. But when it's the D, undetermined, how does the insurer or the lender look at that? Is it actually almost equivalent of an X?
If it's currently a D, that's how they look at it. It's not required. It's undetermined. It's more than likely is safe. But, the Corps of Engineers come through every now and then and change things. And, some people get in a zone, some people get out. Very few get out. Most get in. And of course, FEMA's losing money. So, the rates go up. They had a program, and I think they're on the 4th year now, where for the last 3 years prior to that, for 5 years, they were going to raise it 18% each year. would be the max they would raise it. But when you go 18% by 5 years, that's a chunk that it's being raised. And that's what they can do. So we got to take another year and a half on that. And then I don't know what they're going to do.
In terms of like the insurance premiums going down, like you're seeing for hurricane, this year. So it really does matter what's going on, not only in Hawaii, but just nationwide.
Yes, nationwide for Hawaii, very much so, because the reinsurers raise our rates by what they pay in the country. So if I'm in Japan, I'm going to suffer with them, or Australia, but in America, I'm suffering with America. But because we have so few catastrophes, Hawaii is seeing a rate decrease in our hurricane. Now it's our hurricane for the wood frame, all the non-concrete condos are seeing the biggest decrease. Those of you who owners who were in the standard market, Fireman's Fund, First Insurance, or DB, if you were still with them, because they got off of most of their condos. But if you were with them and they're the standard market, and of course State Farm, but they haven't written a condo since Iniki. But if you're with them, you're not going to see a rate decrease because they never even charged as much as the non-standard markets. So the non-standard markets charge 300 to 500, 800, 1,000% increase, whereas the standard markets were somewhere between 40 to 80% because their costs have gone up. So they're still going to be paying a higher hurricane cost that they're going to pass on to you, but you're still way under what the others have paid. And it was more of a gradual, it wasn't like a spike super high. It was a more gradual increase, and then it could be another little increase. So it's going to be an interesting year, but most people will be pleased with the renewals.
That's good to hear. So I think the last time we talked to you about condo insurance, you had said condos are definitely in turmoil. So would you say the outlook right now at this moment is a little better than that?
I would say it's a lot better than that. I just renewed one today where the ex-board president said, do we have our renewal yet? And she resigned at the last annual meeting, which was in March. And the new person took over. And I got an email from the new board president saying, do you have our renewal yet? I said, yes. And I sent it to her. And then, of course, the past board president was wondering as well. And I sent it to them. And the past board president said, is this right? This is almost 50% less than last year. I said, yes, it is right. Prices are coming down. You didn't have any problems. You've done things so yes, many are pleased, which is good, but not everybody's going to see a 40 to 50%. Some will only see a 10 or 15, but any kind of a reduction is helpful because that's less money that they're out. And if they budgeted based upon the prior year, they then should be okay, not only to pay back reserves, but to pay the current.
Well, that is good news because in this day and age, I never hear the word reduction. You only hear about increases. So that's positive.
The minute it went up, everybody said, it'll never come down. I said, yes, it did. It came down with Iniki, it'll come down. No, it'll never come down, Sue. So it's a pleasure to say, I told not to say it literally, but say, aha, I told you so. Wait till they see this one. Wait till they see this renewal. It's a pleasure to be able to say it's come down. So
that's a prime example of why we listen very carefully to whatever it is that you say and advise.
Exactly.
Well, it's a tough business, insurance is, because even though we want to sell the best we can at the best price and keep it low for everybody, the insurance companies do have to make a profit. And there's this fine line. And then when something goes terribly wrong, and it's sky high wrong, and it affects us so greatly. Of course, it's our fault, which is fine. I have big shoulders, I tell people, and I don't want my board members to get yelled at. So, I attend a lot of board meetings, a lot of annual meetings, explain to everybody what's going on, how your board did the best they could, how you as owners have to help by maintaining your complex. Because I always stress to every single person I speak with the importance of maintenance. Because if you can maintain your condo, we're going to have less claims. It's going to shine and be the bright star when the underwriter looks at it, because I can tell them all the things you've done to maintain. And they like that. They like to know that you're caring about your project, that you're keeping it painted and spalling repairs, and you're doing the parking garage with all the cracks, and you're taking care of all the things that are wrong. When you do that and they can see that you're doing that, and then we spent this money on a plumbing inspection, and it's a huge, you go to the top of the pile and you get the best rate. So I can't stress the need to, as I say, my 3 favorite words: preserve, protect, maintain. That is the job of the board and of every owner with their condo or their home. Preserve, protect, and maintain it.
Stepping up our single family home repairs.
Yes, starting this weekend.
On our own house.
Yeah.
Our own homes always lag. I always
Yeah.
call somebody and say, I'm doing 3 others. I'll be with you soon. And,
Well, Sue, thank you very much for educating us and sharing your expertise in property insurance at Hawaii. And congratulations on celebrating your 50th year in business in Hawaii. It's so awesome.
thank you. It's been a very interesting and very enjoyable career. I truly do like my job.
You are amazing, Sue. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Take care. Good luck to you both. Aloha.
Thank you, Sue. Aloha.
Aloha.